evening and welcome to Soulibration. I'm your host, Shameika Rhymes, and I am super excited to be here tonight. Let me know where you are watching from and how you're doing this evening. Let me know in the chat. I already see Gastonia and Asheville checking in. Welcome, welcome. Remember to share this with your network, and y'all know the drill. If you have any questions at all tonight, drop it in the chat. And again, share this with your network because I think that this topic a lot of people can use. So tonight we are diving into the effects of working in a toxic workplace, what it does to your mental health, your productivity, and even your confidence. How many of you have ever had to deal with that? So we're going to explore how constant control, lack of trust can often lead to burnout, anxiety, and self-doubt. We're also going to take a look at ways that you can protect your peace when you're at work, whether you're working remote or in the office, and rebuild trust and actually just really create healthier relationships at work so that you can be productive and so you can feel confident about the work that you're doing. All right. So let me know if you've ever worked in a toxic workplace and if you've ever had issues that have affected your mental health, because it can affect you physically as well. Let me introduce you to tonight's guest. Sorry, I messed her name up. I knew I was going to do that. Najama Davis is a licensed clinical social worker. She's also a licensed clinical alcohol and drug counselor, field instructor, and clinical supervisor with over 15 years of experience in mental health. So I'm excited to dive into this conversation with her tonight. So let's bring her on.
Meet everyone. I'm happy to be present.
Hi, I knew I was going to tear your name up. That's why I never should have wrote it down in a way that I just say it. I am so sorry.
Okay.
Well, welcome to Soulibration. I'm so glad you're here. So I'm gonna start it off with this. When we talk about the hidden mental health toll at work, what does that mean to you as a therapist?
That many individuals are carrying stress in silence. Whether that's micromanagement or other stresses, but they're carrying it in silence,
Oh yeah, that's
going
good.
unnoticed and unaddressed.
hmm Well, you mentioned micromanagement. What exactly is it? For those that may not have heard that term, they may not have dealt with it. Have may not even realize they're doing it.
Okay, so when I think about micromanagement, it's not indicative of strong leadership. It's a control based behavior rooted in mistrust, and oftentimes it chips away at an individual's confidence, autonomy, creativity, and most importantly, their peace and productivity in the workplace.
Okay. So what is the line between being a detail oriented leader versus being controlling?
I would say the difference. I would say is that when a manager is not allowing their employee to have autonomy, to be creative, to work freely without the constant check-ins.
hmm So when you say constant check-ins, what does that look like? I know what I've experienced, but I want to see if it's the same thing or if I'm just being dramatic.
No, when I say constant check-ins, I would say, stepping in the office daily or multiple times throughout the day just to see where you are regarding a particular task or duty. Sending constant email reminders, letting you know that, okay, this is due next week.
hmm
And maybe getting more than one of those emails reminding you about something that you already know, like a deadline that you already have on your calendar and familiar with.
hmm Yeah, I think one of my experiences long ago, I used to have a manager he worked in a different office, but then he would come to the office I was in and he would pull up his chair right in my cubicle and sit right there and tell me, type this, don't type that, erase that. Like every time I would try to type something and it was nerve wracking.
Yeah.
So is
So
that kind of
yeah,
would that be in line? Okay.
yes, not allowing you the freedom to show your abilities.
Uh-huh. Welcome, Ursuline. I see you in the chat. So, how does a micromanager fit into the bigger picture of a toxic workplace?
Well, it affects the overall morale of the work environment, and specifically for the employee, the individual that's being micromanaged. It decreases their ability to be productive, or it it it, sorry, it affects their ability to be productive. It leads to an individual maybe avoiding coming to work, or it leads to the individual maybe experiencing irritability at work, avoiding communicating with their supervisor that's
Mhm.
micromanaging them.
Okay. So beyond micromanagement, let's take a look at what are some other traits of a toxic workplace, because there could be some other things going on that people may not recognize. Like you said, they may be coming into the office being irritable. They may have anxiety. I know we've heard of the Sunday scaries when the anxiety kicks in for the work week, or maybe they're not sleeping, or whatever other mental things could be going on. So what are some other traits of a toxic workplace are there?
Um, I would say, wow, I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
That's okay. Well, I can just tell you while you think, I can tell you some of that I probably have observed. Where employees aren't happy.
Yes.
There's like a cloud over the room, and it's on everybody's faces, and the what maybe used to have a great culture isn't a great culture anymore.
Yes. So yeah, that goes back to my previous statement where it affects the morale of the workplace, where individuals are not happy about coming to work. The you're moving a lot slower, like meaning that you're not really motivated.
Mhm.
It decreases your overall productivity. Um, when you once the things that you once enjoy about coming to work, it's not really present no more. And sometimes,
Right.
sometimes people, I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Okay. What are some early warning signs that work stress has turned into something more serious, like burnout and, like I mentioned, anxiety, or like you were saying, that loss of motivation? They just don't want to be there.
Yeah. So it could lead to chronic stress, hypervigilance, the employee being on edge all the time.
Mhm.
Um, what you said earlier leads to burnout, anxiety, physical symptoms like not sleeping, fatigue, headaches, and also it can lead to an individual just doubting their level of competence,
Mhm.
questioning if they belong in this space, so they deserve to be in this space.
Okay, so the self worth kind of takes a hit as well. It sounds like. What is hypervigilance for those that don't know?
I would say hypervigilance is like you're on edge. Um,
Hmm.
you're constantly looking over your shoulder, making sure that you got this right, making sure you crossed this T, you dotted this I. Just constant second guessing yourself.
Okay. Okay. Well, how would you say like a toxic or even a high control environment with a micromanager starts to, like, what are those first signs that it's starting to affect your confidence, your creativity, or that sense of self-worth? Is it, I know we've talked about the anxiety, and the hypervigilance, but what else might be like an early sign, like there is something else going on here, like I can't even get my work done because I'm doubting it.
Yeah, I would say if you notice like changes in your work pattern, if you're someone that gets up, you get to work on time, or you get to work 10 minutes early, and that's not happening no more. Um, if you have certain deadlines and you're used to getting things done like a day before your deadline, and you notice that
Mhm.
you're not keeping up with your deadlines, or
Yeah.
you're calling out frequently, coming to work late.
Hmm.
requesting days off, things like that, or needing to take frequent time outs throughout the day.
Ooh, so I'm like, so you're not supposed to take time outs during the day, like, just to kind of regroup a little bit?
Well, if it's something, I'm not saying it's a negative thing, but if it's something that you're not used to doing and you notice that you're doing it now,
Okay,
it's
gotcha.
something to be more aware of. Like, okay, I'm noticing some changes in my work pattern. Not saying that that's a negative, that part of it, but it's something that may be different for some people.
Okay. Now, like I know that the economy is a little shaky right now, but why would you say that so many people that are in these types of toxic and workplace environments, like they know they need to leave, but why do they stay when it's damaging their mental health or even affecting them physically? I've heard people say before it starts to affect their digestive system. Like you mentioned, the headaches, the anxiety, loss of sleep. I had a coworker who would just shake all the time because
Mhm.
just that entire this the thought of having to talk to a manager or something like that. So why do people stay?
I would say for many reasons. I think that some people have the belief that, I deserve to be here and I'm not going to allow anyone to push me out.
Hmm.
And also could be related to economy reasons where, the pay is good here. Um, this is how I take care of myself.
Hmm.
Some people are afraid to move on and try new things or move in new spaces. And
Hmm.
another thing is that sometimes people feel like things may just get better. Some people struggle with letting go as well, where I'm used to being here. Um, I want to be here, but this one thing is affecting my ability to be here.
Hmm.
And they have this belief that it may just get better. And I think that's what keep people in places that they probably should have moved on from a long time ago.
So how do they know when it's time to go? Because maybe they don't realize it's time to go.
I would say, think about your benefit. Like, how do you benefit from being at this job? For example, I would say, does this position or this job help me grow?
Hmm.
Um, because work should be a place where we grow, not where we shrink.
Yeah.
And I think that to protect our peace, I think protecting your peace means sometimes we have to leave spaces that's only serving us stress. Like if you feel like, there's more cons to me being here, then maybe I should reconsider and make a
Mhm.
change.
Okay. So is it toxic if there's a manager that is constantly redoing your work? They assign you tasks, you do it, then they're like, it's good, but no, and they redo it. And can you talk about what that could do to your mental health?
Well, it's going to create self-doubt.
Hmm.
It's going to lower your self-esteem. Um, and sometimes it's going to make the employee question if they deserve to be in this space. It's going to make them question their own level of competence, their intelligence.
Hmm.
Um, and sometimes it may actually, when we talked about earlier about when why do people stay? Some people may feel like maybe I deserve to be here. Maybe I'm not worthy of moving on to anything else because I can't do anything else. Because I feel like when you're being micromanaged, it's making you question your confidence, your abilities, your performances. And the person sometimes gets stuck.
Oh, that makes sense. Because what if this person, I'm just throwing this out there, if they have, a lot of people have side hustles and say they are excelling at their side hustle, but
Hmm.
it's just their main job where they struggle. And so it does it start to affect the side hustle as well because all day from 8 to 5 you're being micromanaged or in a toxic environment, and then you go to do your side hustle and it's like now I don't even know if I can do this. Is that accurate to say that can happen?
That could definitely happen. Where stress from one place can pour into another place.
Hmm.
Because think about, the effects of being in a toxic work environment. It takes a toll on you physically. So
Hmm.
if you're getting beat down physically, emotionally, and psychologically at one particular job and you have to go on to a next, you're going to carry that in to the next job.
So it's like a toxic relationship. You sometimes take it with you to the next one.
Correct.
Okay. So let's kind of, well, first, let me see. In the chat, if you have questions, please, please, please drop them in the chat. So for Black professionals, how can toxic workplaces or these micromanaging behaviors intersect with like bias, microaggressions, or a lack of trust? Because I feel like
Hmm.
as a Black professional, sometimes it's a little worse
Yes.
from just what
So,
I've read.
yeah.
We'll do
So
that.
when we think about micromanagement, it negatively impacts our performance. And when we think about microaggressions, it's an attack on our identity. When those things are compounded, it demoralizes the individual and it leads to
Mhm.
racial battle fatigue. And what I mean by that is that it beats us down emotionally, it beats us down physically, it beats us down psychologically. Like it's putting a strain on us.
Okay. What is it that causes people um, to manage people like that? Like, let's take a look at their psychological, like their mental health. What is it that's causing that lack of trust? That's causing that need to control?
I would say, one thing I would say is that some managers may struggle with like being a perfectionist, and wanting to get things done. And
Mhm.
in that sense, sometimes it's more to do with the manager rather than the employee. The
Gotcha.
manager just feel like, if I'm have this in control, like they fear of losing control and things not going the way they want them to go.
Hmm.
So it creates this environment where they have to be on top of you all day, whether it's through email or face to face.
Gotcha. Well, how can like certain cultures, work cultures, especially those that are like these high pressure environments or they're very competitive, like sales teams or something like that. I'm just making up stuff as I go along here with this question. But how did those types of environments quietly normalize these toxic patterns and reward unhealthy behavior? And I'll give you an example. When I worked in a newsroom, um, there were a lot of toxic behaviors from those in leadership positions, but they were ignored and rewarded instead if ratings were high. You know what I mean? So it was ignored. It's like, it's okay though. It's okay that they're bullying you because the ratings are good. So that means they're doing something right. I mean, that honest, y'all, let me just say that really didn't happen, but I'm just saying, using that as an example.
So the question was,
How do those organizational cultures that have these high pressure like environments or competitive normalize, whether it's kind of quietly normalize these toxic patterns,
hmm,
or they reward unhealthy behavior?
well, I think that I don't want to say that it's in some ways it could be not a conscious thing. I think in those settings they may focus more on the reward rather than what an individual is struggling with.
Hmm.
Um, they're not really taking time out to check in with their employees. They just focused on, okay, this is the goal and this is the reward, and everything else in the middle is, I don't want to say, I guess everything in the middle don't matter, or you just deal with it.
Okay.
That mentality,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
It does. So how do we start to feel safe at work when dealing with these things? Can a toxic workplace change for the better? And or does healing mean you've just got to go somewhere else? You've got to leave.
Well, healing doesn't mean when you. So, for example, if someone was to just leave, it doesn't necessarily mean they're healed.
Right.
Um, they could just be saying, you know what, I'm just not going to deal with this no more, and I'm just moving on. But it doesn't mean that they're not going to carry the burdens of what they experienced at that particular job at the new one. Um,
Hmm. So, what does healing look like?
I would say before moving on, I would say, speaking to, like, having open dialogue with your managers. Having open dialogue. When you notice, and also when you notice that, once you have done all you can do, meaning communicating, maybe indulging in some self-care, and accepting that things in this particular environment may not change,
Hmm.
um, and that you should move on. And moving on and healing may look like, I'm not having any physical effects from this anymore. I'm not having any emotional effects from this particular job anymore. um I have come to terms with where things are and where I'm going, and I'm not allowing it to affect me physically, emotionally, psychologically.
So, you mentioned communication with the manager. What does that entail? Because I think that's where people start to feel stuck, as if like maybe they tried to have a conversation and it went in one ear and out the other, or they don't feel that that person is approachable. So, what are some tips that you can give to those watching of if they or feel like they need to communicate, like, hey, this you're doing too much. I'm sure there's a better professional way to communicate that. But what how should they communicate it? What are some tips for that?
I would say, communicate your boundaries in a calm manner, calmly. um Sitting down with your supervisor and saying, I would appreciate it if we would do weekly or bi-weekly check-ins, um rather than daily check-ins. And I would say also, expressing to them just how you're feeling overall
Hmm.
regarding them micromanaging you, because I think the first start to actually trying to gain a better work environment is communicating what you're experiencing, and communicating that with the person that's making you feel overwhelmed, or feeling like you don't want to come, or giving you communicating with the individual that's making you feel overwhelmed at work. I think is the first step.
Hmm. And how do you do that? Like, was there a script that we can have to follow? Because it is hard when you're now like they're giving you anxiety. Now they've intimidated you. Now that your self worth um, has been hit, you've got these physical symptoms. So going to have a sit down in front of them and tell them your how they're making you feel. What does that script look like?
Well, I would say, write down all of what you would like to speak to them about. Um, I would say, speak to a trusted friend or employee to help validate your experience there
Hmm.
first. Is one of the steps, sorry. Is one of the steps. And if you feel like this individual is just not approachable, and that it's not gonna, there's no gonna be there, the conversation is not gonna go anywhere. Um, I would say, speak to their supervisor.
Hmm.
Maybe you sit down with their supervisor and your immediate supervisor and discuss how things should go moving forward. Um, but if you feel like the supervisor is someone that you could actually speak to one on one, I don't think there's nothing wrong with saying, I noticed that, today you did 2 check-ins, and, in order for me to be more productive, can you decrease the amount of check-ins? Or even if they was to schedule time with you in advance and say, can we, instead of you stopping in daily, can we
Hmm.
schedule a check-in every Monday at this time? Because that helps my productivity at work.
Okay. We do have a comment. Deborah Penix Cook says a closed mouth doesn't get fed. Let them know how you feel about something. Lots of times, also having a solution to present sometimes gives them something to think about and moving forward. I think that's great advice.
Hmm. That's true.
Yeah. So like you just mentioned, that solution may be let's schedule a weekly or biweekly check-in versus you calling me every 2 seconds on Teams or versus you, popping into my cubicle or office to just when you feel like it. So yeah, that's great advice, Deborah.
Mm,
Um,
Um, letting them know, another way to set a good boundary is saying that, this is due November 11th. If I
mhm,
have any questions or concern, I won't hesitate to come to you and sit down with you for your guidance.
mhm.
So you're indirectly letting them know, leave me alone until I need you.
I like that. That's a good one. You guys make sure you drop your questions in the chat or let me know how have you ever dealt with this and how you handled it, because I think it's always the power of storytelling is telling your own story and letting other people know how you handled it, because there could be somebody out there that's like, I do not know what to do, my nerves are bad because now I got to go back in this office tomorrow. So I think we always have to kind of help each other out with that. Now for somebody that's currently in this toxic work environment, what's one small thing that they can do for their own mental health? I know you mentioned self care earlier. Can you maybe talk about that? What could they do self care wise, whether it is at work or after work or
So
before?
early in our discussion, we did speak a little bit about, I made a comment about, frequent miniature breaks.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important for you to schedule throughout the day, if your schedule allows it. Let me take a, in the morning I'm gonna take a 5 minute break to just woosah. In the
Mm-hmm.
afternoon I'm gonna take a 10 minute break to just go outside, get some fresh air before I go back in.
Yeah. Walk to the vending
A little
machine. That's
bit.
what I used to do.
Yeah, I think a little bit of, I guess the vending machine. Because I think movement helps too. Any kind of movement may help, whether it's a walk to the vending machine or walk outside. That may be helpful. Maybe a little bit of mindfulness
Mm-hmm.
throughout the day. Listening to some calming music throughout the day.
Yeah, like I've done YouTube videos, yoga at my desk, or
Hmm.
just stand up and do some stand up yoga. Or, right now, my current thing is going for a 5-10 minute walk, then come back refreshed. Because I may be upset about something and I'm like, okay, I need to think about how to handle it, but I also need to calm down. So I'm going to go hit the pavement for a minute, then I'm going to come back. So, yeah, what about after work? What are some things people could do after work?
So something that I always tell people to do after work is leave your work at work.
Nope, that part.
Um, I think once you clock out, it's your time. Um, don't talk about work. Don't do any work after work. Um, and also, you can still practice some of the things that you are doing at work, like mindfulness, going for
Mhm.
walks. I know sometimes people do talk therapy to process struggles that they're having at work. I would say, just doing anything that will help you decompress. A warm shower, a warm bath,
Mhm.
just indulging in like a good TV show after work, something that's going to make you laugh, something that's going to take your mind off work.
Okay. Okay. Deborah says she makes sure she leaves the building on her lunch break and has some time alone to refresh. That's another good one. I do that too. I mean, I work remote, but sometimes I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to cook lunch here. I'm just going to go out, go somewhere, grab something, sit for a while, or walk around for a little bit, and then come back.
So going outside for fresh air.
Yeah. Yeah. Getting away from the laptop for a minute.
And sometimes
So,
it's best to I think it's best sometimes to have lunch by yourself. I know sometimes in some work environments people may go to work with a colleague or a group of people, I think sometimes it is best to take that time to yourself,
Hmm.
to just clear your mind and just be free of everyone, like detach from everyone, the workplace for your break time.
Okay. You mentioned talk therapy for, is one thing to do after work. At what point along the process do you think it's worth someone thinking about finding a therapist? Because if they're dealing with this and it's affecting them physically, mentally in various ways, when do you think the best time for them to say, you know what, I need to talk to somebody?
I think that when that work starts to impact your ability to function, your ability to focus.
Hmm.
And when I say your ability to function, I mean you have headaches. You get off work, you have headaches. You're not sleeping good. You're up all night. You're worrying. You're on edge. Like, okay, I got to get this done. Like you're constantly thinking about work and figuring out how can I get this done tomorrow. Or you're like you're not giving yourself grace. You're not giving yourself time to actually take a break from work. Um, it you're feeling less motivated. You're experiencing. When I say less motivated, maybe you're starting to feel some symptoms of depression, lack of
Hmm.
concentration, lack of focus, lack of motivation. I said lack of motivation, not sleeping. Um, yeah, I would say those are the main ones.
Would, because this is a term I've heard a lot, I think, especially on like LinkedIn, quiet quit. Is that, when somebody's just like, you know what, I'm still physically here, but I quit. Mentally, I quit.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that's a good sign to actually start going to therapy or actually looking for another job.
Okay.
Because if you're not enjoying what you're doing, it
Hmm.
sounds like it's time to move on or talk to someone about it.
Okay. Because maybe it also is, and I don't know, I just thought about this. And is it that it's a toxic work environment, or is it that you're irritable because you're no longer aligned with that work? So it's not meeting whatever needs that you had when you started. Say you've been there for more than 3, 4 years, and it just, you could be bored with the work. Is that, am I on the right track with that?
Well,
Or it could be all of the above.
it could be all of the above, but I think when you get bored with the work, I think that's kind of like a different topic from
Okay.
like you're yeah, it's a different topic from the environment is just toxic or I'm tired of my manager that's a micromanager.
Hmm.
Um, so someone that's bored could display irritability, and someone that's being micromanaged and burnt out could also display irritability, but they don't have to have anything to do with the other is what I'm saying.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Deborah, you're right. She says when you go to work and you're already ready to leave, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep the car running. You're ready to
Work,
go.
work avoided behavior. That's what I call that. Work avoided behavior.
Yes.
You're leaving out. You have to be to work at 8:30, and you're leaving out at 8:25, knowing it takes 20 minutes to get there. Um,
Been there. I've been there before. But you have to, and then it's like you have to have that talk with yourself. Like, I need this job. I got bills, so let me get in the car a little earlier because there's going to be traffic.
yes.
So, what are some ways that people can set boundaries and speak up to the manager or whoever's giving them issues in the workplace, without being labeled difficult or said, or being told they're not a team player, that they're the problem, without them being gaslit.
Um, I think it's important to be clear in your expectations. Be clear in your boundaries.
Hmm.
Articulating those things without feeling like you're doing anything wrong. Um, and not allowing not allowing like the negative backlash to affect you, like not allowing it to affect you or get in the way of what you are doing. Like, because I know sometimes when supervisors give off the impression that someone is not being a team player, or they're angry or they're irritable, it causes us to overperform. And I don't think that's a healthy way to handle that. So I would just say be mindful of your response, physical response, not to overperform or overwork yourself to keep up with someone else's demands or
Mhm.
unrealistic demands and expectations.
Okay. All right. So as we only have a few more minutes, y'all. So if you have questions, please drop them in the chat. What does once you've left that environment, say you've decided to leave, you've moved on, but how do you within yourself rebuild that self-trust, that confidence and joy in your work and get your mental health back on track? I know, yes, therapy is an option, but what else can someone do to rebuild their self-trust and confidence in themselves?
Yeah, I think it's important for us not to carry burdens from the previous job.
Hmm.
I think it's important for us to give ourselves grace. Um, Focus more on progress and not perfection. And letting and reminding yourself that this is a new beginning and a new place, and you are worthy of a healthy workplace, a healthy manager.
Okay. Well, what if you're still at the same place? How do you rebuild that self trust, confidence, and joy again in your work and get your mental health on track? I mean, I know we've mentioned taking those breaks, but how do we build that self confidence back up after we feel like it's been torn down?
um, I would say celebrating your victories and your small wins. If you was given a task to do and you completed it a day or two before, celebrating that. Acknowledging that you are deserving of being in this space because you earned it, you worked hard for it, and I'm not gonna allow anyone to push me out unless I want to go out.
Hmm. I like that. Celebrate those wins, celebrate those victories. Cause yeah, I think, that will remind you like, you know what? I did that. Yeah. Let me know in the chat. What kind of victory did y'all have today? Let's celebrate that. Cause I'll go first. I edited a podcast today and I don't normally do that. I
Yeah.
did the interview, edited the podcast and published it. Never happens.
And,
So what other advice do you have? Let's talk to the managers for a second. But what does healthy, emotionally intelligent leadership look like?
I would say someone that's able to express themselves in a clear, appropriate manner. Delegate tasks. Delegate tasks without needing to beat down your employees. Open and honest communication without making your employees feel little or.
Okay. Well, I know I've learned a lot tonight. I have. And filing it in the back of my mind in case I deal with this stuff, so I know how to have these open communications with a manager or somebody in the workplace if it's starting to affect me mentally and physically. I hope you guys also in the chat have learned a lot from tonight's conversation. So I do have to ask the last question, and I ask all my guests this question: what feeds your soul?
That's a great question. I would say being able to have these open conversations like the one we're having now, being
Mhm.
able to pour into others, allowing others to pour into me.
Okay, yeah, that's a great answer. And how can people find you on social media, or if they do decide, you know what, I'm not sure where you practice, but if they decide they need some help and or need, want to try talk therapy about going through this exact situation that we talked about tonight, how can they find you?
So a Google search is
Hmm.
one way. You Google me, I come up. Another way is I do have a website, Najima Davis Counseling Services, that will also come up as well. And I have a Facebook account with under my name, and also I have an Instagram account where I usually post inspirational things like Black Girl Nourishment. Um,
Hmm.
so I post a lot of inspirational things there. I give advice there, things like that.
Well, we could always use some of that nourishment. I'll have to check that out. Thank you. I want to thank you for joining and sharing your knowledge and giving us the tips and insights that we can carry with us, whether it's this job, the next job, or the next one. And hopefully, none of us have to deal with a toxic workplace. That is always the goal. So, thank you again. For more information on what we've talked about tonight, whether it is the mental health aspect, the physical health aspect, even anxiety, you can head over to blackdoctor.org. There's resources and articles over there. But coming up on Soulibration, it is Menopause Awareness Month. And I didn't forget about those of us that are in peri, post, menopause, all the things. So I will be joined by two incredible doctors who are breaking down the symptoms, the stigma, and what you really need to know about this next chapter in women's health. So I want to, I'm excited to dig into that. So you don't want to miss that. Join me Wednesday at 7 o'clock right here on blackdoctor.org. And I hope you all have a soul filled rest of the week. Thank you again for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you, co host.